Village of Ridgewood Village Council regular public meeting. Today is February 13, 2019. The time is 8 p.m. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to the same as provided by law of a schedule including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Newton. Here. Councilman Seaton.
Here.
Councilman Voigt.
Here.
Councilwoman Walsh.
Here.
And Mayor Hache. Mayor,
Here.
before we start, I just want to mention one thing. There was one typographical error on this agenda. It's at the end of the meeting under closed. It does indicate we're going to discuss a Ridgewood water settlement for O'Keefe. It's actually O'Donnell. So we are going to discuss this at the end of the evening. Again, it was a typographical error. The resolution will reflect O'Donnell, as will the agenda reflect the correct name. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Please stand for flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join us in a moment of silence in honor of the brave men and women serving our nation's armed forces and as first responders. Thank you. I move the bills, claims, and vouchers and statements of funds on hand as of January 31st, 2019 be accepted as submitted.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voigt.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. I move that the Village Council minutes of December 5th, 2018, having been reviewed by the Village Council and now available in the Village Clerk's office, be approved as submitted.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
Voigt.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. We have a few proclamations tonight. We'll start with Dad's Night. Anybody here from Dad's Night representing tonight? Well, you could tell them all about it. Whereas the Village of Ridgewood treasures its children, and whereas our school system supports and nurtures our children, and whereas Dad's Night has helped our schools by raising hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past 70 years, and whereas Dad's Night is dedicated to providing this service to the village's children, and whereas this year's event will be titled Dad's Night 75, the Diamond Jubilee. Now therefore, the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood does hereby proclaim Friday, March 8th and Saturday, March 9th, 2019 as Dad's Night Days at Somerville Elementary School and at Hawes Elementary School in the Village of Ridgewood in honor of all the dads here this evening, as well as all those who have volunteered before them. Then we have Read Across America, Councilwoman Walsh.
Whereas the National Education Association's NEA Read Across America Day will be conducted on March 1st, 2019 as a national celebration of reading and the birthday of Theodore Seuss Geisel, better known as Dr. Seuss. And whereas Read Across America, New Jersey will be observed statewide by the New Jersey Education Association in partnership with the New Jersey State League of Municipalities, the New Jersey Library Association, and their local affiliates across the state to promote reading and adult involvement in the education of our community's students. And whereas the citizens of the Village of Ridgewood stand firmly committed to promoting reading as the catalyst for our students' future academic success, their preparation for America's jobs of the future, and their ability to compete in a global economy. And whereas the Village of Ridgewood has provided significant leadership in the area of community involvement in the education of our youth, grounded in the principle that educational investment is the key to the community's well-being and long-term quality of life. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood calls on the citizens of the Village of Ridgewood to assure that every child is in a safe place reading together with a caring adult on March 1st, 2019. And be it further resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood enthusiastically endorses the NEA's Read Across America Day and recommits the Village of Ridgewood to engage in programs and activities to make America's children the best readers in the world.
Thank you. And next we have Super Science Saturday, Deputy Mayor Nixon.
Thank you. Whereas Saturday, March 2nd, 2019 is the 31st Annual Super Science Saturday, which is a community-wide family fair dedicated to the idea that science is exciting and fun. And whereas this event is billed as the greatest science extravaganza in northern New Jersey, and whereas more than 1,000 science lovers from Ridgewood and surrounding communities will flock to Ridgewood High School to see a host of science exhibits, workshops, and demonstrations. And whereas students from all of Ridgewood schools will be participating in the Hall of Science, and whereas Super Science Saturday appeals to everyone, from the casual observer to the aspiring scientist, sparking an interest in students, adults, and organizations wishing to further explore their passion. And whereas some of the events will include an interactive show by the Liberty Science Center, indoor drone racing, the Great Paper Airplane Contest, outdoor drone racing, and the 30-foot egg drop challenge, and a live rocket launch. And whereas this annual event was started over 30 years ago by award-winning science teacher Jim Wallace to encourage families to share their scientific interests and talents, and is now run by Parents Committee of dedicated volunteers. And whereas this invaluable service to our youth has become a hallmark of goodwill and cooperation, now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood does hereby proclaim March 2nd, 2019 as Super Science Saturday in the Village of Ridgewood, and invites scientists, science enthusiasts of all ages to come to Ridgewood High School and join the festivities.
Thank you. I feel extra safe tonight because we're honored to have members of Ridgewood Finest here tonight. Chief Lucky will be presenting the Police Department Awards, and I'll ask my council colleagues to join me down on the floors along with the chief.
To ask Officer Tucole and the Delrico family if they would like to come forward. On January 28th, Officer Tucole was off duty and exercising at Retro Fitness in Fairlawn. Officer Tucole reported observing a group gathering around the gym and went over to investigate what was occurring. What he observed was an unconscious young man on the ground who was in obvious distress. Officer Tucole took immediate action to attempt to aid the victim and realized that the male party was not breathing and had no pulse. Utilizing his training and experience as a police officer, Officer Tucole began to render aid and attached an AED to the patient's chest and began CPR. The AED delivered a shock to the patient, and Officer Tucole followed that with 6 rounds of CPR. After the 6th round of CPR, the patient began to breathe, had a pulse, and began to regain consciousness. All of these actions were taken prior to the arrival of an ambulance or the paramedics. The patient was treated by EMS and transported to the hospital for treatment. Due to Officer Tucole's swift actions in rendering immediate aid to the victim, he will be receiving 2 awards. He will be receiving a life-saving award for his prompt and alert actions, which resulted in saving a life, and a CPR save citation awarded for extending a patient's life by performing CPR. I would like to thank the Delrico family for being here, as I understand how emotional the entire situation is for everyone involved. And we are very grateful Officer Tucole was there that day. Next, I would like to ask Sergeant Chuck, Detective Casson, Detective Henke, Detective Shortway, Officer Torino, and Detective Youngberg to please join me up here. As many of you may recall, back in September, we had a motor vehicle accident where an individual fell into the street and subsequently got run over and was killed. The driver of that vehicle did not stop. Due to the efforts of the individuals up here, they literally was looking for a needle in a haystack because we had no information on the vehicle. Through the hours and hours that they put in and knocking on doors and looking at cars, they were able to identify the vehicle and the driver. Not an easy case to solve, and I am proud to say that these officers will be receiving 2 awards for the work they did on this case. An Exceptional Service Award for highly credible accomplishments, bringing acclaim to the officer, the department, as a result of training and devotion to duty, and a unit citation for a team effort under adverse conditions. Please join me in thanking Sergeant Chuck, Detective Casson, Detective Shortway, Officer Torino, and Detective Youngberg.
With that family,
Now I'm going to ask Dr. Sullivan to come up and say a few words. Dr. Sullivan is a new business in town, and I wanted to welcome him and get a chance to have him introduce in his business.
Hello. My name is Dr. Brendan Sullivan. I'm a longtime Ridgewood resident. I've been here. This is my 15th year. I'm a cardiologist. When I first moved to Ridgewood, I joined a practice in Clifton, so I've been practicing there since ever since I moved here. I've decided to open up an office locally, right down the street, actually, in North Maple. If you,
What's the address?
75. I do cardiology and internal medicine, so I treat pretty much everything from a cold to a heart attack. I'm on staff at Valley Hospital locally, and I'm happy to be working in my hometown now. So I just wanted to say hello.
Well, welcome back. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, we'll now move on to public comments, not to exceed 3 minutes per person.
Rorick Hallaby, 374 Evergreen Place.
Good evening.
Good evening. I looked up the village website to find out the time of tonight's meeting, and I saw two meetings for this evening, one at 7:30 and one at 8. I clicked the 7:30 meeting, and it led me to a page which did not make much sense, more of a coding page. What's going on?
Just tell him, wait.
I also need to
Excuse me,
respond.
well, just hang on
Just
until
so we
we
can
get that
hear you,
noise,
'cause I can't-
we can't hear you.
We just pause the
Is that
time.
part of my 3 minutes?
No, we're going to pause the time.
Don't worry. You won't infringe.
Okay.
Time in.
Okay. Rorick Hallaby, 374 Evergreen Place. I looked up the village website to find out the time for tonight's meeting, and I saw two meetings for this evening, one at 7:30 and one at 8. I clicked the 7:30 meeting, and it led me to a page which did not make much sense, more of a coding page. What's going on? Now, I also need to respond to two comments the deputy mayor made at the end of last week's village council meeting. In reference to the village website, the deputy mayor, and here I'm paraphrasing her, made mention that she had been working on the website for quite some time, and that if the village manager had a problem, she would have told her. In my opinion, it is arguable that the village manager would use much political capital to tell the deputy mayor much about her efforts. Also, the fact that the deputy mayor has spent quite some time is the problem. This is not a situation where you get an A for effort and time spent. We need results. I urge the mayor to put his foot down and suggest to the village manager that she instruct Dylan to seek outside professional help to get the website done. Ridgewood needs a professional website we will all be proud of, and we did it now. As another interest, by the way, when you go to the Franklin Lakes website, you click a link, you get there automatically. On our website, you wait 5, 6, 7 seconds. There's something wrong with it. In reference to my comments about the mayor's report, the deputy mayor characterized my comments as hurling insults. I beg to disagree. My comments were highly critical, not about the style, but about the content. For the record, if you listen to my presentation, I complimented the mayor for issuing the report. Communications like this are critically important to keep the residents informed. But I'll be damned if I am to behave like an obsequious factotum and thank the mayor for doing something he ought to do in the execution of his duties. This is not a banana republic, nor the Trump White House. One last thought. When it comes to hurling insults, the deputy mayor sets the gold standard. I will never forget when she referred to Miss Janice Willett, a distinguished member of the community, as a two-time loser. When Miss Willett raised some important questions about the interpretation of the ordinance relating to giving village residents priority in non-uniformed hirings. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Good evening.
Good evening, Saurabh Dani at 390 Bedford Road in Ridgewood. I just wanted to comment that on the new website, the big buttons that you have for navigation that are very easy to navigate, and that's a very unique, good design. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Joanne Ritchie from,
Hi, Helen.
hi, from Raymond's. I just wanted to comment, I know you're voting on the ordinance tonight regarding our outdoor seating and planters and everything. And I'm glad to see that there's an amendment to it about setback and everything. But I would encourage you, some of it seems, some of the restrictions seem to be not based on what the need of the ordinance is. If the need of the ordinance is for people to be able to get out of the cars and for the planters and whatever not to be in their way, that's great. I would just say, please don't put restrictions there that are not necessary. I've been the victim of overzealous ticketing for code enforcement. And if you're going to say 4 feet, I'll get a ticket if it's 4.5 feet because my plant grew too big. I believe that the trees, I put little trees in my planters for Christmas, and that I'm probably out of the ordinance now because I'm sure they're more than 1 foot, and I've got 3-foot planters. That doesn't serve anything. Those kinds of restrictions and restrict me from putting nice plants that are going to look great on the street. So, you know, there's space in between planters. If there needs to be space so people can get to the meters and in and out of their cars, great. If it doesn't need to be there, if it's not necessary, why do you need to state that it has to be there? For example, at the curbs where there's loading zones or whatever. I'm just asking for you to please make all of it in a way that serves the needs of what the ordinance needs to do without restricting us more than you need to, so that we can, you know, most of us that are, I'm sure all of us that are doing these are doing it to beautify the downtown and want something that looks great. You know, allow us to do that and don't tie our hands more than you need to. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Will we have an opportunity to speak to the cafe ordinance when you're discussing?
Yes. All right, with that, we'll close public comments.
His comments.
Sorry? Oh, okay, go ahead.
So just in response to Mr. Hallaby's comments, I will stand by my statement from our last meeting that you hurled insults at someone who is a volunteer, albeit elected, who worked extremely hard on a newsletter to communicate information, very relevant information to our residents. It is above and beyond what is required for him to do, and this mayor did a terrific job. And I don't personally, I think that he deserved a thank you, not insult. Second, I stand by my comments about the website. And finally, at no time did I ever refer to anyone as a two-time loser. And if you're attributing that comment to me, I highly suggest that you go back and review any materials you have and find it anywhere that I would have made any such statement. It never happened. I never said that. So please kindly make sure when you come to that microphone, if you're going to accuse someone of something, make sure you have it right. Thank you.
I move on to the manager's report.
All right. I want to make everyone aware of Recycle Coach for residents looking to reduce their household waste, become better recyclers, and avoid the scenarios where you look at your significant other and say, oh, did you put out the recycling? Oh, was it this week? I thought it was next week. What was I supposed to put out? Recycle Coach is a recycling platform. It's now available in Ridgewood. You can access it from your desktop computer, from mobile devices, or through digital assistants such as Amazon Alexa and Google Home. By leveraging the power of voice technology, the platform makes it easy for people to get local disposal information for thousands of household items when they need it. It is absolutely free at the App Store and Google Play. This information was presented in the Ridgewood Recycling News Winter Edition, mailed to every household. It was also in the most recent e-notice, and there is a link to this information from the Village website in the narrative part. Village calendars. Posted on the Village website is a listing of and a rather few corrections and additions to be included in the 2019 Village calendar. They will also be included in an e-notice and in every calendar given out or sent out by Village Hall employees going forward. Winter break camp will take place next week during the February school recess. Our recreation staff has organized a wide variety of special programs. Details and sign-up information are posted on the Recreation Department website. It includes such things as science tellers to the Wild West, which includes science experiments for grades K to 5, Winterfest celebration with Health Barn, grades K to 5, with winter crafts, healthy cooking creations, and fun. Airplanes with hobby quests. The science of flying is made simple and enjoyable when you take this STEM class. This, again, is grades 1 to 5. Colorful Warriors Yoga and Art Camp. This combination class participants will learn to warm their bodies through movement and yoga, all with fun, challenging poses. This is ages 5 to 9. The annual Weight Loss Challenge postcards will be mailed soon. The challenge begins on March 24th. We have seen several dogs running off-leash in Memorial Park at Van Ness Square. I want to remind everyone the only park where dogs can be on leash is at Habernacle Park. All other parks prohibit dogs. I also want to mention that geese are becoming a problem again in the village. If anyone finds geese nesting on their property, please call our health department to report your observation. If anyone would like to volunteer with Geese Peace, the health officer would welcome their help. I know that last week we had a question about ACH payment and the $5 that is charged for an ACH payment. I actually found out that that is because we are charged the $5, so therefore we charge it back to the resident. However, there are two types of ACH payments. One is off of our website, and the other one is through our finance department. There are approximately 250 taxpayers who use the information off the village website. The other one is if you go to the, or ask the finance department for a form, you fill it out, and the difference is with the one on the website, you can designate the day you wish to pay it. With the one from the village, we get all your information, we get a canceled check, and then or avoided check, and then we take the money out on the first day that the payment is due, and that is free of charge. So if you wish to have an ACH payment for tax payments free of charge, you can contact our finance department. They will send you a form, or you can come in and fill it out. They do need, as I said, a voided check, and that is free of charge. I also want to remind everyone that Monday, February 18th, all village offices will be closed in observance of President's Day holiday. There will be no sanitation and recycling pickup, and the recycling center will also be closed.
Move on to Village Council reports. Councilman Seaton.
Thank you, Mayor. Just very briefly, myself and members of the Shade Tree Commission will be meeting with the Mayor and the Central Business District Advisory tomorrow morning to discuss the tree well situation downtown and potentially a project moving forward to help rehab those and create an environment where trees could thrive. The Ridgewood Environmental Advisory Committee and the Green Team will meet on February 19th at 7 o'clock in the Garden Room to kick off the meeting with NV5 to discuss future planning, village master planning. And then on February 20th at 7:30, the Shade Tree Commission will also meet in the Garden Room. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Historic Preservation Commission meets tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. downstairs in the Garden Room. And NV5, our planner that's doing our visioning process, is preparing a village-wide mailer. This will help promote the visioning process and surveys, and at that point when people receive the mailers, they'll also be able to contact the village clerk's office. If they don't have access to a computer and can't take the survey by way of electronic format, they can request, anybody can request a paper copy, hard copy, and it can be sent right back to the village. So we are compiling hard copy surveys that will be entered manually by NV5, and that keeps everything nice and clean. So we're really excited, and that should be going out probably within the next 10 days. That's it.
Thank you. Councilman Walsh.
I don't have anything to report on the library. Chamber of Commerce had their meeting this morning. Neil Desai was the guest at our meeting this morning, gave the chamber a brief overview of the visioning process. I think he mentioned that your meeting is on the 20th, and invited members to attend this meeting if possible, but I don't know if there's a limit on who's going to be at that meeting, or is there...
So we segmented, there's two meetings. The first meeting is going to be with business owners and commercial property owners in the downtown.
Okay.
That's going to be at 8:30 a.m.,
Okay.
8:30 to 10, and that's going to be in the library auditorium. And then there's an 11 sorry, a 10:30 to 12 meeting with realtors,
Okay.
also at the library.
So, but anybody can attend those?
They're public meetings, so anybody can come in and sit,
Okay.
but it's not going to be an open forum. Anybody can come in and provide.
No,
yeah.
but for the chamber to
They're open meetings,
disseminate
yeah,
that
anybody
to
can come in
members.
and.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Then we had a conversation about the kiosks. So while the kiosks are working for many, there are still lots of challenges with the kiosks. So, you know, it's obviously it needs to be a topic of conversation for us because there's the feeling that some people are not happy with the fact that they have to use a kiosk and are not coming back to Ridgewood to shop or to do business. So in certain areas, it is more of a challenge, like on Broad Street, because people are used to coming in for a quick coffee, leaving. Now what's happening is they're getting out, they're having to go down, they're fumbling with the kiosk. By the time they get done with that, you know, it's causing some challenges. So wanted to bring it up as a topic of conversation again, not this evening, but maybe we can have some more conversations about kiosk issues. I mean, they're working. That was the problem we had with the one on Chestnut, where it was never working.
Right.
They're working, but there's a lot of pushback on the kiosks. And then I think there's several members that are here for the cafe ordinance this evening, and there are concerns that this is going to limit the seating, and the seating, obviously, in the warm weather is what brings a lot of people to the restaurants and brings a lot of people into town so that they can relax and enjoy. So we will have probably a lot of comments, I would imagine, about the cafe ordinance. So.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
Councilman Boyd?
Nothing to report, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The only, I was just give an update on the meeting with NV5 and CBDAC. So far, the response rate has been very high from the businesses and from the realtors and commercial property owners. So we're looking forward to a very robust discussion on the 20th. Tomorrow, CBDAC meets for its regular monthly meeting right downstairs at 8:30 in the garden room, and that is all that I have.
I just want to ask a question. Heather, can we pull the reports from the kiosks so that we can better understand where we're at, just our stats?
Yeah, what I'll do, I'll put it on for a discussion item, probably February 27th, and I'll have them pulled
Great.
as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
So our next item is Ridgewood Water. We have no ordinances this evening, but we do have resolutions. The following resolutions, numbered 19-41 through 19-48, will be adopted by a consent agenda with one vote by the Village Council. There's a brief description beside each resolution, and each resolution will be read by title only. Title 59, approval, pipe appurtenances and service materials. Award contract, pipe appurtenances and service materials. Award contract under National Joint Powers Alliance Program, purchase of backhoe loader. Award contract under National Joint Powers Alliance Program, purchase of materials and supplies and equipment. Award sole source provider contract, software support of SCADA system. Authorized change order, distribution improvements, and Lakeview extension study. Declare property surplus, 2 backhoes, and authorize cancellation of taxes for 451 Goffle Road. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. I move the first reading of ordinance 3704.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes, so ordered. Would the clerk please read ordinance 3704 by title?
An ordinance to amend Article 8 of Chapter 156 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, food and food handling establishments at Article 8. I just want to mention this is an amendment which allows larger heights for various movable barriers up to 4 feet. Also, the fact that it says that if there are streets that do not permit public parking alongside the curb, or if there's a defined parallel parking loading zone along the curb in front of an outdoor cafe, the movable barrier shall be permitted to be 13 inches from the face of the curb instead of 30 inches. And so this is just that part of the amendment. The other one is actually up for public hearing later this evening.
So the lip of the curve, we had determined it was approximately 6 inches, not 13.
Okay, we were told 13. That's what it was stated last week.
No, because the band itself is 2 feet.
So
the distance,
okay, well, we can change that, so we just need to have a motion to change that to 6 inches.
So that was only, but that's where there's no parking. So if
Right.
somebody, so just so everybody understands what's happening is that if there's no parking spaces at that location, somebody has the benefit of moving their barrier, their movable barrier, closer to the
the
curb
outside
space,
edge of the band, of the brick
the
band.
band. So, okay.
All right,
So-
so I just need a motion to amend this from 13 inches in this instance to 6 inches.
Or do we want to say just the
Right, where
outside
there's
edge
no
of the-
public
of the
parking
brick band?
from the face of the curb.
Right.
That, we have to measure it from the face of the curb.
Okay.
All right,
Fine.
so
So-
I'll make the motion to amend it to the, remove the 13 inches and to make it the 6 inch to the outside band of the bricks. Is
Second.
that- Okay, got it.
Okay, hold on just one sec, so, and then, I'm sorry, second was Mike?
Ramon.
Oh, Ramon, okay. Okay, so this, let me just have a vote on the amendment. So, Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hushay.
Yes.
Okay, so then we can now, so we can move that the ordinance be adopted on first reading as amended.
As amended.
As amended. That's Jeff.
Okay, so I just need a council member to move that.
Okay, why don't you move it, Mike?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I move that ordinance 3704 be adopted on first reading, and that March 6, 2019 be fixed as a date for the hearing thereon.
Okay, it's adopted as amended.
As amended.
Okay, so I just need a second.
Okay, I'll second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hushay.
Yes. So order the clerk to please read ordinance 3704 by title as amended.
No, we already did that.
No,
Wait,
you're
we're on
to move the
3705.
I move the first reading of ordinance 3705.
Second.
Okay. Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hushay.
Yes, so order. Will the clerk please read ordinance 3705 by title?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 145 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood fees at Section 145-6, enumeration of fees relating to code chapters.
I move that ordinance 3705 be adopted on first reading and that March 13th, 2019 be fixed as the date for the hearing thereon.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hushay.
Yes. I move the first reading of ordinance 3706.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hushay.
Yes, so order. Will the clerk please read ordinance 3706 by title?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 133 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood dumpsters.
I move that ordinance 3706 be adopted on first reading and that March 13th, 2019 be fixed as the date for the hearing thereon.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hushay.
Yes. I move the first reading of ordinance 3707.
A second.
Second, sorry. My bad.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hushay.
Yes, so order. Will the clerk please read ordinance 3707 by title?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 145 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood fees at Section 145-6, enumeration of fees relating to code chapters.
I move that ordinance 3707 be adopted on first reading and that March 13th, 2019 be fixed as the date for the hearing thereon.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hushay.
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3698 by title on second reading, and that the public hearing thereon be open.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hushay.
Yes, will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3698?
A bond ordinance providing for various capital improvements in and by the Village of Ridgewood in the County of Bergen, New Jersey, appropriating $2,137,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $2,030,000 bonds or notes of the village to finance part of the cost thereof.
The public hearing is now open. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hushay.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3698 be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3699 by title on second reading and that the public hearing thereon be open.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3699?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 265 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Vehicles and Traffic, at Section 265-33, Permit Parking.
The public hearing is now open. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3699 be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3700 by title on second reading that the public hearing thereon be open.
Second.
Newton.
Yes.
Seaton.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
And Hache.
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3700?
An ordinance to amend Article 8 of Chapter 156 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Food and Food Handling Establishments at Article 8. This is the complete change of the outdoor cafe ordinance.
The public hearing is now open. Good evening.
Paul Vagianos, 280 Rivera Court. I'm also the owner of It's Greek to Me restaurant, as you all know. We've been there for almost 23 years. We've had outdoor cafes there for that entire time. And I want to begin by saying it's the outdoor cafes, for those of you who were watching, that in the mid-90s revitalized the entire downtown. This is a restaurant town, as we all know. We are not a retail town. We have some complimentary retail, but it's that outdoor dining, the sidewalk cafes, the umbrella tables that are at the foot of the curb that really changed the shape and the face of our central business district. And and I have 2 points which I raised in a letter that I believe I sent to all of you. And the first and most important is that by moving the tables to 30 inches from the edge of the curb, I mean, there are many changes that are being made. I think that we can live with most of them. But moving them 30 inches from the curb is going to change the landscape of our sidewalks and our sidewalk cafes in the summertime. And as I said in that letter, many of us will still be able to maintain a 52-inch walkway. But now you're going to have tables floating in the middle of the sidewalk. It's not going to be attractive. It's going to be very unsightly. It's not going to be something that is done in most other communities. I'm a student of this. Everywhere I go, I pay attention to it, both in New Jersey and across the country and in other countries. And while I certainly understand that we want to be able to accommodate drivers who want to get out of their cars, and I see that as a fair goal, I believe that we can do that by, instead of moving them 30 inches back, moving them 18 inches back. And if you were to look, which I have on many occasions, and most recently, just this afternoon, I went out and I started measuring how far cars park from the curb. And while there is the occasional car that parks right up against the curb, it is by far the exception. The vast majority of cars, I must have measured 25 cars. The vast majority of them are 9 to 12 inches from the curb. If my wife's parking, it could be more. And so the point is, there is a reasonable buffer zone of about 30 inches if you include that space for people to open up their cars, their car doors. If you go to Hudson Street, the parking lot there is a single white line between spaces. Most cars don't have that much room. We're providing a greater buffer zone at the curb than we do and are in our own parking lots. So this is something that I think will cause a lot of problems in the downtown. Some restaurants will lose their seating by the curb. Some of us will be able to move our seating in. It won't be attractive, but we can move them in and maintain a 52-inch walkway. As I said before, my walkway right now is 65 inches wide. Never put a chair on the end, never obstruct that. And on a busy Friday, Saturday night in the summer, that 65-inch walkway gets awfully crowded. If we're going to narrow that down to 52 inches, believe me, you guys see me out there every night. There are going to be so many more problems caused by narrowing that walkway for the thousands of people who walk those streets on weekends than by the handful of people who will still have enough room to get out of their car, but not enough to swing the door wide. So I propose that we amend this to go to 18 inches, which, by the way, I think it was a great move to amend that buffer zone to 6 inches for those restaurants that don't have parking adjacent to their restaurant. I think it's really terrific to minimize that. So I think that this is the most important change. The second change that I would propose is the idea of limiting the sidewalk cafe permit to March 1st to November 30th. As just happened last week, and as I sent you guys a photograph, we had a day that was 66 degrees in February. And yesterday it snowed. Well, yesterday the revenue at restaurants was way down. That gets balanced out to some degree by those days, rare though they may be, but they happen virtually every year. We get 5 or 6 days where it hovers around 60. And when it does, everybody comes out to eat, and they want to sit outside because they all have cabin fever and they're trying to get a little bit of sunshine. So if we can, even if we have to take our tables in between, and then put them back out, if we just have the option of being able to put them out on those warm days, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Good evening.
Michael Valdecchio, 250 Hope Street and Mediterranean Restaurant. And on the same subject.
Could you just speak up a little bit, please? Bring the microphone up and speak into it. Thanks.
In the same subject of the clearance, I see here that you have you provided a less of a setback for places that do not have public parking or loading zones. If the logic behind it is the opening of the door, then can we suggest to add to that exception the places where or in my case, where parking is 45 degrees and it's not, actually my colleague is here and he can, So I don't know where other places it's being, available, but I think in our case, if the logic is the doors, then we don't have open doors in there. So I suggest to be added to this. Another little point I wanted to make. If I make a mistake, I apologize. But when I read it, I understand that the barrier is supposed to be able to be moved by a regular person, I guess, that was the terminology. I understand the frustration of heavy-duty barriers and so on and so forth, but I want to bring to your attention that without the possibility of anchoring them to the sidewalk, which it's a common sense, it's not available. If that barrier is being able to be moved by a regular person, it's going to be in the middle of the street in no time because we have a lot of wind in downtown. So, talking from experience, I have my umbrellas in the middle of the street. I have my barriers in the middle of the street. So, yes, need to be removed fast. But please be very careful with one person. Maybe you need two of them, or I mean, what I'm trying to say in here, we're running the risk of the wind blowing them away if they're not a little heavier or a little bit with a better way of anchoring them, considering that we cannot bolt them to the floor. So that'll be all. Thank you very much. If I may, I spoke here last week regarding the trucks and the deliveries, and I was under the impression that it's a start of a conversation. It became TV news.
We can't, this is the public hearing for this ordinance and specifically on the outdoor cafes, so we can't talk about this. You can say the public comments at the end.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Hi, Melanie Hubin, 431 Bogart Ave. I just was in a conversation over the last couple of days about this ordinance with a couple of restaurant owners in town, and I really haven't read it clearly, so I'm not sure, but their comment was restaurants that have their outdoor seating on private property or their own property are being charged the same amount or held to the same sort of rules for the outdoor seating charges and stuff as the restaurants that have their outdoor seatings and cafes on public property or town property. I never would have thought of it, but it does seem sort of as if it wouldn't, that's not necessarily fair. The example that came to mind was McMurphy's. I think there was one other one. But if McMurphy's is giving up their own private parking, as just an example, to put their outdoor seating there, their planters were made to be the same lower height as everybody else's in town. They changed them after they had purchased nicer, more attractive, taller ones. But it's on their own property. They're not blocking any site. They're not blocking, and they're not, I don't think they're above other restrictions or ordinance restrictions. But it was something about the charging of the same amount of, the same pricing when they're on their own property as restaurants using the sidewalks or public property for theirs, and it just ought to maybe be factored in, or a little more conversation on it before it's decided. Thanks.
There was a section for private property.
There was a section, but where is that?
Hello, Glenn Carlo, 143 Union Street, and I own the Steel Wheel Tavern. Just wanted to make sure that I'm echoing a sentiment earlier, and Paul, I know that with parallel parking things are a little dicey, but I just want to reiterate that I think it makes sense to have some sort of language in this ordinance where if there is no parking, or if you have, I don't know, you call it 45-degree angle or head-on or angle parking, or if there's no parking at all, because there are places that are sort of on corners where, there is no parking. So to have any sort of 30-inch or 13-inch or any other requirements just wouldn't seem to make sense. So I just think we want to avoid a blanket one-size-fits-all ordinance for the outdoor cafes. Is it, I don't have the ordinance in front of me other than the number here. Am I to understand that it is I guess
typically the passenger side rear and front doors that we're concerned with being able to open and get in and out, right? So I guess I would just ask this question: is there precedent for a certain number of inches? Is there a, how do we arrive at the number of inches or feet that is both safe to the people getting in and out of their vehicles, and also, works in the best interest of those of us that own, establishments with outdoor dining? I thought Paul's point was fantastic. The further you move them in, you're going to wind. It's the law of unintended consequences, right? You can all see it right now. You move it in too far, now you have people who are, instead of walking, and okay, we still have 52 inches, I get that, that's not going away, but now you have people who are going to walk in between the tables and the curb, right? So now you're going to have a stroller, or you're going to have a little child, and boom, the door gets opened, and we have a bigger problem than we had before the ordinance. So I think this needs significant thought. Have we covered every single possibility? Or are we just suggesting that we think 30 inches is good, or we think 13? Because, again, unintended consequences, I can probably poke a lot of holes in any distance that we come up with. So I just, in summation, head-on parking or no parking, let's make sure that language is included. And if we're going to go with a certain number of inches, let's just make sure that we've, really thought it out well. And if you're looking for a volunteer to, serve on some sort of subcommittee, and I don't even know if those exist, but if they do, I'm happy to serve. Thanks.
Thank you.
Joanne Ritchie again. It just occurred to me as he was talking that perhaps where there is parking, the distance could be the same as a meter. Perhaps, whatever we're putting on the sidewalks where there is parking, doesn't extend closer to the curb than a parking meter does. Because if a parking meter can be there, should be okay. Just a thought.
Thank you.
Okay, I actually just wanted to respond to that.
Good evening. I'm Randy Carson, 817 East Ridgewood Avenue, Park West Tavern. I think the overall picture here is everybody here is trying to beautify their place so people come in and enjoy themselves and relax. I hope that's taken into consideration. I'm not quite sure why we're reducing the time limit on this. The only thing that jumps out to me is snow removal, but we're all responsible for that anyway. And for us to have snow buildup in front of our place defeats the purpose. If somebody thinks you're a slob outside, you're going to be a slob inside. I think we've maintained these properties very nicely. I think they're an addition to the town. And if you're going to cut us back 5 or 6 months, maybe cut the fees in half. But I don't see any reason to do that. I had people last week sitting outside. I have older people coming from Omaha Steaks to walk down a block, sit down and rest on the way there. They can't walk 5 blocks without resting. It's a community service. We're restaurant people. We want people, if you're out of town, if you're going away, drop your UPS packages at our store. We are community driven, and that's what makes us go. And I hope it's taken into consideration when these decisions are made. Thank you.
Thank you. More comments? All right, with that, we'll close public hearing. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Let me just say one thing. So if you want to take these comments into account, then we can do that. But if you may want to continue the hearing, I wouldn't close it. I don't know what you're leaning towards.
Yeah, my inclination is, and I had mentioned before, but apparently for enforcement was an issue, is on the streets where we have angled parking, not requiring the same. Right. Because you're not opening the door. Right. A parking meter is not located at the place where you open the door. It's located at the front of the car.
Right.
So you would never open a door into a parking meter, and parking meters are going away as it is. I think that requiring that on the angle streets, I think it's probably a little too much, because
The angle that
you're
we
not
have
going to have
the
a
issues.
30-inch protrusion from a car bumper onto the sidewalk.
Right, with the angle, we did have the
Right.
issues with people having to walk long distances in between to be able to get onto the sidewalk. That was the issue. And that's why we didn't want to have it so close to the curb.
But I think that that's resolved by having that 3-foot opening for every length. Is that, did I understand?
Between each barrier.
Between each barrier, there was an opening.
I'm going to have Tom Yaka come up and address some of these concerns, since he was, first of all, building department enforces, as does the code enforcement officer, and also the fact that he helped to author the ordinance.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Is the light on?
Yes.
Okay, just speak into it, thanks.
Okay. Just to reiterate what Heather was saying is that establishments that have angled parking, if the 3-foot opening, you're right, Deputy Mayor, if the 3-foot opening for every 8 feet of barrier doesn't line up with a pedestrian passage, then the occupants of the vehicle are going to have to walk behind the vehicle, in essence putting them back out in the street, and they may have to move maybe one, possibly 2 car lanes in the street before they could actually gain access to the sidewalk.
But the width of a car, I'm actually really not good about the size of a car, so I think the width of a car is maybe 6 feet, 7 feet?
7 feet.
7 feet? So if we're doing this 8-foot break, then logically, there would have to be a space, an allowance for that to occur. So it wouldn't be a problem, but, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here, that it wouldn't happen because the width of, the actual width of the front of the car into that angled spot, and the angle itself actually creates a shorter distance, so you would actually have that opening throughout.
But we did have issues with angle parking, and with there being blocks of sections where people couldn't get to the sidewalk.
But that was before we implemented in this ordinance. My understanding is that we have a linear footage of barrier, and then we have to have a space. So that, I thought that, in my mind, that would resolve that issue where somebody has to walk any length before they found an opening. Am I maybe I'm misunderstanding? So, I mean...
And with a car, you're always going to have the sort of the safety stop of the front tire hitting the curb. So whether you park, whether you're trying to observe a 30-inch setback or 13 inches, I think it becomes maybe a bit more problematic if it's a 6 for that car to be able to park over the curb. But I don't know how, because the setback is from the curb to the sidewalk, not from the curb to the street. So that's not making it any safer for the driver of a car to be able to get out, right? Because you're gaining the distance on the sidewalk, not on the street. So either way, you're going to park right up against the curb. And if you don't have room to walk around, you have to walk around the car.
So, or I guess the other question then is, in order to not overly, I mean, I don't want to overly complicate this, but is it, if we're looking at the same 30-inch setback on where there's angled parking, and then we have that linear, that run of barrier, and then we have a space, then does it make sense then just to reduce their angled parking setback to that 18 inches? Do we kind of make that at least some place to walk? Because I actually think it does resolve itself, so maybe that's an answer.
It's a possibility. I mean, we could certainly examine that, but another thought I was just having is that in the event somebody on a street that has angled parking, if they bring the tires directly to the curb, you typically have the front bumper overhang.
Right.
And I'm sure that varies by vehicle make and model, but we would certainly want, or I think we should consider a buffer between that bumper and the outdoor diners.
So what would happen now if somebody's barrier, and I know Steel Wheel in particular, you all have a barrier that's fairly close to that curb. So if I pull into the angled parking space, and you're saying that my car could actually hit then his barricade, his barrier? Is that, I mean, it's possible, right, then?
It's possible.
Right.
The question would be, how many instances have we had reports of people hitting barriers?
I was just going to say, but to date, I haven't had any instances, but it's...
Yeah, because I don't know that that necessarily happens as often as we would think. So, I mean, I would be, you know, the one thing we can do is we can adopt this and then amend it again, and this way we have our ducks in a row. And then in terms of Randy Carson's comment about, you know, whether or not we shut that, I guess, close that window of downside where there's no outdoor cafes permitted, maybe we can narrow that window. But the reason that we did that was, aside from the fact that code enforcement and building department recommended it, we also did it because, not just for snow removal, but because that allowed us the opportunity to really evaluate sidewalk repairs, tree well repairs, and other things, maintenance, general maintenance issues. So maybe we could, at a later date, because we want to get this in place, maybe we can just narrow that window, if that's something that we want to talk about it.
I just think we're assigning a lot of weight to a low probability event. You might have one or two nice days in the winter. I just think it's
well,
too much.
But we can at least get this moving forward.
No, we need to move forward, but I think,
you know,
I think in terms of what's I think reasonable, I think when we had talked about the distances, you know, the reason why and you had gone out there, you measured and you opened the car door, you did all the testing. I just don't see a need to have that kind of setback on the angled streets. I mean, does anybody else agree? I mean,
no, I agree. I mean, I was just thinking we could split the difference, because if that accommodated what your concerns were, but I actually do agree with you. I don't see any reason to do the setback on the angled spaces. I would be okay with amending that whenever we have to, however we have to.
So I'll just make a comment about the timing, and I mentioned it at the last meeting in terms of, you know, having no outdoor seating during the winter months. Let's call them the winter months. You know, we could have a stretch of warm weather, and I don't see why we would keep people from, as mentioned, they're maintaining the sidewalk themselves. So if they were going to put it out and bring it back in, I don't see that to be such a challenge, because obviously in the winter, if there is nice weather, people are going to go out. I mean, we had that nice day and everybody was out.
So I would agree with Bernie as it relates to that. I mean, I think restrictions on not having seating in the wintertime, especially when there's warm days. I mean, we're restricting the business from actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is feeding and entertaining people that come to our town. I also think some of the suggestions that were provided by many of the proprietors here were good suggestions, and I think we should personally look at them and kind of dwell on these a little bit more and come up with a reasonably good solution to this that makes everybody happy. And, you know, I was... Michael's suggestion about the barriers, I mean, there's a concern about them falling over. The question of 18 inches versus 30 inches, I think, is a thing we should consider. The language that has to do with 45-degree parking is an issue. I think we need to look at this a little bit more carefully. I'm not in favor of passing this, by the way. I'm going to vote no for those very reasons. So I just want to make sure that that's on the table.
So I'm actually in favor of moving forward with it. I just think that we could amend those little pieces of it afterwards, especially that window of opportunity, that whether it's from the dates, that 3-month, that there's no sidewalk cafe, we could amend that at a later date. But we want to get this done before, so permits can be issued, and I think that's really important that we get this done so that people can get their plans in. And I think this was really a very important piece, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we wanted to have these safety features in place before permits were issued. And so that's the reason that we could actually adopt this now and then amend it, whether it's that downtime, we can amend later on. The 6-inch thing, I agree with. I think that's fairly easy. I did want to point out that in terms of the blowing around thing, I wholly disagree with that. I think that we had some concerns about the A-frames, and the A-frames have to be properly weighted down. They have to be sandbags or whatever it is that, and there's an accommodation in here for that. So certainly there's an opportunity there to ensure that things don't blow around. They wouldn't move, because if that's the case, then we should be concerned with the A-frame signs, because there's no difference to that. So I'm just in favor of moving forward and then refining this down the road.
And I just want to say, with the movable barriers, we can't allow them to drill into the sidewalk. That's a public sidewalk, and we don't allow anything to be, drilled into that sidewalk because it's a public piece of property, and it could cause a, tripping hazard or something like
Sure.
that. So.
And I do think the importance of having nothing on the sidewalks for a period of time allows the village engineer and others to go out and inspect the sidewalks, because otherwise we can't see those. And I think that was the point in all of this, that we do have some issues that have not been maintained, and without the without the opportunity to observe and to make certain that they're all maintained properly, we don't see that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like some of the concerns that were mentioned they're kind of minor concerns. You can amend, a distance is 30 inches or 18 inches or whatever it is. We could always go back and amend those issues. It doesn't seem like there's anybody that's totally against, any of this at all. So I would be in favor of passing it and then go back and amend some of these issues. Like, again, with keeping the area clean during the winter time, have no tables or anything out so you could do inspections. I think that's important. But, maybe you could put in language that says you have to, always take these things in during the winter or something, so they can't stay out. Like if you get a run of like a week that's 60 degrees, you wouldn't be able to put tables and chairs or anything out for like the whole week. Because then, or maybe it's a couple days and then it snows, so then you have all sorts of tables and chairs covered in snow, and it makes snow removal difficult. So, I mean, something like that could be looked at, and again, you can amend the distances, but I think for the purpose of issuing permits and moving this, we would have to move this as it is right now, and then quickly go back and make the amendments and changes, and, introduce them next month.
Nope, closed.
I think everybody's got to be aware, though, that if you're going to tweak it, if you're going to try and tweak it now, it's going to cause a republication and start from square one, and that would be mostly for the distances. With regard to the hours, the time of year when you can do it, this ordinance has from March 1st through November 30th is when outdoor cafes are allowed. If you pass it tonight, it doesn't affect it at all, because it'll be March 1st by the time it takes effect anyway, so that could always be revisited, that one. But if you're going to do anything tonight with regard to the distances, after the discussions that you've had, that would require that it be republished and reintroduced.
Good.
So I have an idea that maybe we could, so Restaurant Week is in February. And January, sorry, January. We had 3 weeks and it was successful. I'll say many said that it was successful. Perhaps we could, if the weather is good those 3 weeks, have the ability for those 3 weeks to have the outdoor. And obviously it would have to, be nice weather.
Right, I'm just saying that right now we could move forward with this, and then we can put this on to our next work session again, and then rethink if we have the dates for the restaurant week, and we can kind of look at a calendar, and like I said, maybe narrow that to the more brutal days of the winter, and this way we get those, make sure everything is maintained and safe.
Right.
Yep. Moving along. Oh, you want me to go? Okay. We actually did close it, right?
Yeah, we need to close it. We just need a second.
I'm sorry?
A motion and second.
On what?
On the close.
Yeah, because the mayor did move it.
I seconded it.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So, Councilman Seaton seconded? Okay, thank you. Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
White?
Is this for the hearing?
This is to close
the public hearing.
Okay, all right, yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
Hache?
Yes.
Okay.
I move that ordinance 3700 be adopted on second reading and the final publication as required by law.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
No.
Walsh?
I'm going to vote yes, but I really do believe we have to amend it. Yes, we will. So, yes.
Okay, and Hache?
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
I move the clerk read ordinance 3701 by title on second reading and the public hearing thereon be open.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hache?
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3701?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 145 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood fees at Section 145-6, enumeration of fees relating to code chapters.
The public hearing is now open. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hache?
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3701 be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hache?
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3702 by title on second reading and that the public hearing thereon be open.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hache?
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3702?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 265 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Vehicles and Traffic, at Section 265-33, Permit Parking.
The public hearing is now open. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hache?
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3702 be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hache?
Yes. I move the clerk read ordinance 3703 by title on second reading that the public hearing thereon be open.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hache?
Yes. Will the clerk please read the title of ordinance 3703?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 145 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood fees at Section 145-6, enumeration of fees relating to code chapters.
The public hearing is now open. I move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hache?
Yes.
I move that ordinance 3703 be adopted on second reading and final publication as required by law.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hache?
Yes.
The following resolutions, numbered 19-49 through 19-57, will be adopted by consent agenda with one vote by the village council. They will be read by title only. Approve 2018 budget reserve transfers. Award professional services contract, 2019 land surveying services retainer for preparation of tax assessment map. Title 59 approval, infrared asphalt restoration. Award contract, infrared asphalt restoration. Increase 2018 deferred school taxes. Declare property surplus, police department vehicle, and miscellaneous equipment. Endorse Stop, Look, and Wave, Be Safe, Be Seen campaign for pedestrian safety. Oppose North Bergen Liberty Generating Power Plant and authorize settlement damage to PSE&G pole. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Newton?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Voight?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
And Hache?
Yes. We'll go back to public comments, not to exceed 5 minutes per person.
Yeah, Rorik Holiday, 374 Evergreen Place. I'm a proud registered Democrat, but when I listen to the discussion you've had about the tables, I quickly become a Koch brother libertarian. I mean, here are people who know nothing about what you're talking about. And I'm sorry if this is called hurling insults, but to me it's true. If there is a problem, if there's a safety problem, why don't you ask the restaurant owners to get together to look at and solve whatever concerns you have? Let them decide. Who are you to say 6 inches versus 12 inches? Look at the mess you've made with the parking. The parking kiosks is a joke. There are more parking SKUs, if you wanted to call it, in Ridgewood, that you can shake a stick at. I get confused. Can I park here? Can I park there? Is it 9 o'clock? Is it 10 o'clock? Is it so much? Is it so much? All resulting from people sitting there feeling a lot of power and trying to dictate their will on people. When it comes to the restaurants, as Paul said, outdoor parking has helped revitalize the downtown area. I think lots of people have lots of fun. The restaurant owners have a stake. They have a stake to maintain the village. They have a stake in keeping clean sidewalks. Now, if you have concerns, set some general parameters and let them come back to you with what they think is the right thing to do, instead of sitting there sounding like you know what you're doing, which you really do not. And this is called hurling insults, so be it. Okay? Just stop telling people what to do. Over and over and over, you do nothing but sit down telling people what to do. The one good thing in the restaurant, this area has suffered so much. The hospital has been kicked out. Slowly and surely, you're working on undermining the whole school system. And now you're working on the one good thing about downtown, which is the restaurants. Leave it to the restaurant owners to come up with a plan. If they're unreasonable, you can always pass an ordinance. But let them come up with something they can live with, and that's good for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I wanted to thank Heather and the Streets Department, at least in my neck of the woods. They did a great job yesterday, plowing the streets up and down, up and down. It was terrific. But it brings to mind a question I have about the brining and the salt. I've been seeing a lot of things about how bad the brine and the salt are for the environment. And gosh, there's so much salt that goes down sometimes that gets thrown from the spreaders, that gets thrown like several feet up into my property and whatever. And yesterday, prior to the snow, it seemed that they had either salted or brined, but the streets were snow covered anyway, which makes me wonder whether that's really necessary when the plowing does such a good job. So just from an environmental question, I was wondering if at some point you might be able to consider looking into skipping the salt, skipping the brine, and just plowing. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, Boyd Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I was the resident who made the comment about the ACH fee of $1.05. I appreciate the manager doing some research on that. However, I still think that fee is too high. As I mentioned before, the water department initially had a fee for an ACH, and they got rid of it. So my suggestion is that the finance department get rid of it for for tax payments, property tax payments as well. I was also aware that I could sign up with the finance department and have it taken out of my checking account automatically. However, and maybe I'm the odd duck out, sometimes it's difficult to make sure that you have $3,800 in your account on the day that it's going to be removed. When I control it myself, I know to put the money in or transfer the money in, and sometimes I pay early, sometimes I pay a day after the due date. So that option doesn't work for me. I'm sorry. So the $1.05 to me is high. As I mentioned, we own property in Hoboken. The fee there is 50 cents, which I think is outrageous as well, since everybody else seems to be doing ACH payments without a fee. So again, my suggestion is the finance department, if that's what the organization that's doing it for us is charging us, we find somebody else to do it. Maybe the same people who are doing it for the water department that are charging any fee at all. The other comment I'd like to make, it's been brought to my attention, and I've observed it myself, that regardless of the number of cones that are placed out on Franklin Avenue near the Starbucks, there are still people who are coming out of the Starbucks and making an unlawful left turn. I was wondering if the manager could give an update. I know that there was some talk about buying some additional or some alternate devices to put in the street there, but it had to get approval by the county. Sometimes I see a police officer sitting on the corner there trying to do some enforcement, but it's not working. It just simply isn't working. Maybe we need to require the people at Starbucks, when they pass the cup of coffee to the people, to make a statement that said, you know that there is no left turn out of the driveway here. It just seems to be happening like every third person makes a left turn, and I don't get it. There's signs all over the place, there are cones in the street, but people just don't seem to get it. It's going to cause a bad accident someday, so my suggestion is that maybe we can get an update about what's going on, but something else needs to be done. Maybe the stanchions like you've got up at Chestnut and Ridgewood Avenue are better, or maybe the cones need to be spaced out further apart. But like I said, every day when I'm walking my dog, I see somebody who comes out, goes around the cones and makes a left turn and heads down the street. And typically what I say is the law doesn't apply to them, I guess. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Saurabh Dani, 390 Bedford Road, Ridgewood. I was here to make a comment on the refuse container ordinance, but I think it was just introduced today, so there was no first hearing. So I just wanted to mention that 2, 3 years or 4 years ago, when leaf fines initially started, in the first year, a lot of residents did not know about those, and it was a surprise, and there was a lot of noise, or residents were not happy. So if you can consider some sort of communication plan around the new dumpster permit and fines ordinance, so that way people are aware of it. And also if there can be a grace period initially when the ordinance goes into effect, so first few months if just notices can go out, or violation notice and not the actual fine. And lastly, or alternatively, if the fines can be phased in, instead of 250 first year, if the first year's fines can be those like leaf fine $80 or something, and then subsequent years it can go more. Because once first few people get the fine, then people will know about it. The notice that will go out, most people will not read it. So people will know about it after violation notices or after the first few fines. So if you can just phase it out, I think that will be better. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll close public comments, but before we go...
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, if I may, just take some liberty. I know that earlier in the night we did a Dad's Night proclamation, and no one was here at that time. Oh, you were going to get there?
Yeah, I was going to say, we'll break protocol for a second. Because we had the proclamation, and I know that one of the co-chairs is here, he was held up with an emergency, so I want to give him a chance to come up and give a plug to Dad's Night and thank him for all the hard work that these guys put in and making it fun to raise money for our schools. Thank you. Come on up.
Come to the podium.
Sure us. Yeah, please.
All right.
I know you're not shy.
Thank you so much. It's flu season. I'm a pediatrician. Sorry, I was at Valley Hospital, but thank you so much for giving me the time to be acknowledged. Dad's Night has been a big part of Ridgewood's community since 1944. It started out with the old Kenilworth School, and it was just a little song and dance that the dads decided to put on for the kids to kind of help us get through the times of World War II. 75 years later, we're still going strong now with close to 300 members, doing a lot of great charity work, doing a lot of great things for our kids and our community at large. This year, our show is on March 8th and March 9th, free of charge, and we'd love to see all of you guys there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, with that, we'll take a resolution to go into closed session.
Be it resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that the Village Council meet in closed session on February 13th, 2019 at 8 o'clock p.m. or soon thereafter as a matter on the agenda can be reached. and the said closed session be held in the caucus room of the Ridgewood Village Hall, 131 North Maple Avenue, Ridgewood, New Jersey. Be it further resolved that the matters to be discussed in closed session are limited to legal matters to include affordable housing, Ridgewood Water Settlement, O'Donnell, and Board of Education election. These matters are allowable under NJSA 10:4-12 et sec. Be it further resolved that the minutes of this meeting shall be made available to the general public when such matters have been deemed complete by resolution of the Village Council. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.